What I want for my daughters is for them to grow up being completely in control of their sexuality, their sexual experience. But what I want them to have is the knowledge that when they believe that they're ready, to know how to have the conversation and go to whoever their mentors are in their life and to have an open conversation about it and say, here's the step that I'm feeling that I'm ready to take, and to trust the conversation with their mentors rather than trust some fumbling teenager. I think there's a way, particularly as conscious fathers, that we can gift that freedom and the boundaries to our daughters. Like, they can own everything that's amazing inside of it, and what they're saying no to, they're really clear about. And that's, delivering that kind of power to women, but to my daughters in particular, what the boundary is, that everything inside this is safe and amazing, and everything that I don't want is an absolute no. And there's no holding the conversation back anymore. Right? By the time our kids are 11 years old, they have access to their friends who have looked up everything that we never even heard about. My daughter's in her first year in junior high, and so part of the conversation around the boundary is, I can't be with her every moment. I don't know whose cell phone is going to be there looking up what, and so I have to be comfortable enough in the conversation with her to help lead her to know, to make a decision of, I'm just, if that's beyond what I'm comfortable with, I'm going to go choose to do something else or be somewhere else. And our kids are going to have to make those decisions for themselves. I had to go out of my way to see that kind of image by the time I was, 15. And now 10, 11, 12 years old, our kids have access to everything. And a friend of mine called me up. Her 13-year-old daughter had come home, and she said, Graham, I need you. I said, what's going on? She said, my daughter's asking me questions about anal sex, but you can't not answer the question. So I thought it was courageous enough of her to find someone that was willing to answer it when the daughter didn't have a good relationship with her dad. But there's no stopping this conversation anymore. It's out there, and either we as adults get comfortable with it and lead in that area and create a space of safety around it, or we let them fumble around and figure it out for themselves. But they have like way more access to information before it's going to be healthy for them than is helpful. As we're dating or getting to know each other, which is that conversation, I think we should talk about sex and being able to be as comfortable talking about that as something else. And I've begun now talking with men around the conversations about purpose and consciousness and just getting more comfortable in that. But we have to get to the point when you're with a partner, and whatever those firsts are going to be, if you're experiencing them before you've even talked about them, you put yourself at risk. Your heart, your body, your spirit. And so I think the conversation and getting to the point where we can talk about it is going to be important. With the lights on, without having have had 3 glasses of wine already. I think it's just as important for someone if they're 73, 63. My daughter's 13. The rule is the same. If you can't talk about it, you're probably not ready to be doing whatever it is. So I just said there, like, there's the rule of thumb. If you need it to be dark in a vehicle with sort of distorted reality, and you've been necking and making out, and you're just kind of letting things happen and you're not really thinking, that's probably moving too quick. If you can't be comfortable naked with each other, like seeing each other as two human beings and being naked, it has to be with the lights out and sort of pretending you're someone else. If you have to have a few glasses of wine, I think a great step in sexuality is having a shower together before you're going to be intimate together, and appreciating each other as two people and two bodies. So I've shared that with my oldest daughter. The other girls are too little for that conversation, but I'm thinking, like, what a great gift to set them up for knowing what these steps and what these boundaries are, so that it's not just this fumbling around and figuring it out on the go. When you're in a conscious relationship with a conscious partner who's connected to you, literally the sexual experience every single time is like, I had no idea it could feel that great, and I can't imagine that it can be any better. And then the next time it is. And my experience as a man in that is, I get that's what's going on, and I'm like, I can't imagine how next time how it can be any more than this. Because there's a dance in that process when you're tuned into your partner and what you know is going on. And so every time for me, following that energy and following that flow is something new, and I can feel what's going on and that it's going to another place. And I can't imagine what's going to be better the next time. That's what's in the potential of the experience of intimacy and partnership and sexuality, in the feeling of orgasm, in the emotional and spiritual connection that you have with a partner. And so it's not about just hitting some new kind of physiological best, but you get all those connections at all those levels. That's a pretty personal, revealing thing to be talking about those qualities that are happening for you. But you only get there if you can have that kind of open conversation. It's tough and it's edgy. One of the things that I think has been an enlightening answer to women when they ask it, that men are not universally wired to want to have sex with every woman in the world. That's not how we're wired, but it is a result of being unconscious. We're wired to have a purpose. We're wired to have a singular, unique purpose. And until we figure out what that is and are living with that and focused on it, then we chase everything else. And if we could not have that open conversation about all those aspects of life, you can't get there. So these conversations about all aspects of life have to happen. You cannot have an area of life that you just don't talk about. That area will hold everything else back.
And the more you open, there's nothing that compares to being in that state of the most ridiculous orgasm you've ever experienced. The only thing that's more intense is birthing a child.
Sexuality is our gateway to God, to spirit. We're closest to it in that moment of orgasm. And as men, we get about 4 seconds. That's it, and it's pretty much the same every time. And you can see it when a guy's having an orgasm. You can visually see what that experience is. It's going on exactly as he ejaculates as it is in his head. And then there's, exceptions. You can have an orgasm without ejaculating, but pretty much it's the same. Whereas for women, 1,000 different kinds of orgasm. It's unless you're having a samey where it's the same thing every time with a partner, the same way, and it's predictable. But there's so much range and length and depth and crying and screaming and scratching and eyes rolling back, just everything under the sun that's imaginable. And so you are, as women, a man's gateway to God. As we're witnessing that experience, there's 2 times as a man we feel like a god. One, when we're fully living our purpose and we do something, whether that's making something with our hands or speaking something with our mouths or doing something in leadership, and we can feel that there's the house, look at it, I'm done and it's magnificent. Or there's the response of the crowd or the thing that I've created and it's I'm that's my godness coming out of me. But that's pretty rare. We don't get to do that every day. But in sexuality, in an experience with a woman who's fully open and we're being completely present with, and she's experiencing that next level of orgasm that we've never seen, there's an awareness, I must be a god, because nothing less than that with this goddess and connection to everything that's spiritual and conscious permit to be in this experience with her. So your ability to be connected like that on that level is our experience through it. And that's why I say, until we're connected to our purpose, we're chasing it. We're pressuring you. We want to get to that, our own tiny little release. And most men are probably stuck there. They want their own tiny little 4-second release. The slightly more conscious men are looking to live vicariously through your orgasm, and probably most of the women in this room have experienced that, where he's just trying to make you come, and it's like this bell that he rings when he gets there, and it still feels kind of one-sided. It's not that connected experience. It's like he won because you came, whereas the less conscious guy, he won because he came. And it's when there's that really, truly profound connection. And I think as women, intuitively, you get that's what's possible in making that connection happen. And that's what we're all waiting for. And that's the women of this generation. When I'm speaking to the evolved woman, she goes, I know there's this thing, even if I haven't experienced it, I get that it's possible. And it's not just finding a guy who cares about my orgasm. It's not just about us having a mutual, there's something that's bigger than that, that's just about coming. That's kind of where the conversation in sexuality has gotten to. It's just about different kinds of orgasms and levels and G-spot orgasm. And that's really trivializing what goes on. And I can tell you from witnessing it, what happens to you, we don't get that. And it's not just about something that physiologically happens in your body. There are moments where you're connected to whatever God is. And in those moments, we, if we're open to it, get to realize the finiteness of ourselves, but our participation in the connection to everything. So as men, we need to have that conversation with our sons, with our brothers, with our peers, with the people that we mentor. There's just literally a shortage of men to show up for the population of women that are ready for it. So it's a tough, honest conversation to have, and every individual woman is navigating her way through until there's enough conversation with men and pressure on us to step up. The challenge in that, in everything for sexuality for women, is that you bond quicker, you bond deeper than it is for men.
This is the love of my life, and you wake up the next morning, what did I just do?
What's my last name?
And this tattoo on my arm.
And I think we've done a big disservice to both genders with the whole fundamental idea that it's men on the gas, women on the brake. That it's always up to, that men are always interested, and it's always up to women to say no, and to be setting that boundary and standard. Because as men, we don't risk our heart the same way. For one night stand, not at all. Women have general boxes that they tick. If he fits these and these and these parameters, that's what you're looking for. As men, we have incredibly specific boxes that we tick, and that list can be 1,000 details long, and sometimes we don't even know everything that's on it. And until we're clear about what that is, I think it's irresponsible of us to just be like dumping ourselves into relationships and having sex wherever we can show up and leaving it up to a woman to make all those choices and figuring out, are you emotionally ready, and do you have this going on? That we need to be training our sons, that they have a responsibility in it beyond just, well, if you're going to do it, wear a condom. And that's about the basic conversation that happens with boys right now. Girls, we have all these standards and everything else. And for boys, it's like, well, make sure you don't get her pregnant. But hey, like whatever you can get, have at her. That's not enough. Boys need to understand that they're going to become men, and that as men, they're responsible for those choices and what's going on. And I see this in the younger guys. It's become a massively polyamorous free-for-all there. And the challenge, I think, and I think in a number of years we're going to see a lot of pain come out of that, because there's people that are espousing how love should be free and just be open, and I think those of us that are older and have been through more realize, no, you can't bond with 15 different people or 3 people at a time. We long to be connected to one person that we trust, and that we can build it piece by piece by piece. And you can't share a little bit here and then go off over here and do something else and then come and bounce around like that. But because men can do that easier without it hurting their heart, I hear a lot of this conversation in the relationship community about how it's okay. But then I start hearing the echoes from the women that I talk to coming out of it about, I tried it and I tried to go along with it, and he said it, and so and I wanted that to be okay, and I felt like I'd lose him if it wasn't, which is probably true because he has that much access, but it doesn't work for me. So I feel a big responsibility to have conversations with those kinds of men, because they were taught, they were raised, as much as you have access to, take that. That's what you do as a man. And yet I think there's a different conversation that we need to be having with our younger generation of men to men. That's not the goal. The goal is not to have as much of everything that you can experience. It's to understand who you are, where you're here to show up, and to do that very purposefully and consciously, and to be building something on it. Not to spend 20 years just experiencing everything in life that you can until you're ready to settle down. And the more that we become aware of, the more that we become responsible for. And the higher the elevation of that that conversation goes. I keep saying every time the intention is to talk about sex, it ends up being talking about something bigger and deeper and broader, because everything that is around the topic of sex has so much more. It's probably the most profound conversations that we can have. It's
You can't isolate sex from everything else.
But we do.
For me,
We try.